We saw that the equinox is in the 37 and it's in the 1. We've seen the theme, that is a theme of the extended family, so that we finally get to a point, it's mother and father after all the line. We finally get to the point where we're talking about the family of man, or the human family, or, we've got we've got all kinds of planetary organizations. In other words, there's this whole movement. But the key that makes it work, and the key that makes it work are the beings that carry the activations in their time. So in order to activate that 37, you need the presence of the 13. And in this way, you can see what this particular combination is about. Now, remember something about the 13th gate. The 13th gate is a gate of secrets. It is the 13th gate that, after going through the human experiential way, as part of the abstract process, that it is the 13th gate that collects the secrets. It's the 33rd gate that reveals them. But it's the 13th gate that collects them, what it learned through the experiential way. And so one of the things to recognize about the basic bargain of this era is that the basic bargain is there's only going to be harmony if the secrets are revealed. We already know that politically. That in situations where you have societies in which secrets are kept, that eventually those societies break down. They just do. And that the more that governments appear to be revealing the secrets, the easier it is for them to actually control their populations. We find the same thing in business now. All of the recent scandals. All of this now is about transparency. Let's make everything transparent. Let's see how much money people spend. Let's see how much money they really make. Let's see what's really going on. Let's not cook the books. And the same thing with governments. Our whole movement in democracy, remember, this is our era since 1615. Our whole movement in democracy has been transparency rather than democracy. We call it democracy, but what it's been is transparency. How do you make decisions that are going to govern our lives? We want to know how this is going to work. And ultimately, we want to participate because we're part of this bargain. We are a family. You can be the leader, but we're your children. It's not like we gave up leaders, but we changed the bargain. Yes, you can be the leader, but you got to treat us like your children. In other words, we're a family. We'll give you the capacity or the opportunity to lead, but you have to lead for our benefit. And you can only do that if it's transparent, because otherwise we don't really know if you're doing that. Are you taking the tax money and buying villas? We want to know. So the theme of transparency, very important. The secrets are part of our development now. And it's about revealing the secrets. I've often described myself as the snake in the garden, but at the end, where the snake says, no, you can have all the fruit. You can have the tree. You can have the roots. You can have everything. You don't have to look for knowledge. Here it is. Don't waste your time looking. Here it is. Here are all the secrets now. That's the theme for us. All the secrets now. That's the bargain. And there is no harmony. There is no harmony until we know all the secrets. It's the great truth for us in this time. And think about something. The secrets are not going to be available after 2027. They're just not going to be there. They're not going to be there. So all of this for us is very important. That's why we have a time in which there is so much knowledge coming to the surface. Because after all, this is programming us. It's programming us to want to know the secrets. It's programming us to, demand transparency. And because the harmony is ruled by Venus, you have to recognize that there are forces on the dark side that don't want to tell you anything. So we have dictatorships. We have societies in which the people are not allowed to know what's going on. We have corrupt organizations that cheat and hide things. And so it's the world, after all. We have everything. But you have to see that the driving force is transparency. Let's see what's really going on. It is also the ability to relate and commune with everyone with equanimity. And one of the things you can see with that is that the most incredible example of that is the internet world and the web. I mean, this is the web, the ability to relate and commune with everyone with equanimity. It's the freest thing this planet has ever known. Incredible thing. The access to information anywhere. Everybody gets in the same way. Everybody gets to the resources. I mean, you can spend I'm a information junkie, and I spend a couple of hours a day surfing, and the amount of information that is out there is, it's mind-boggling, and good information, solid information, all kinds of stuff. I mean, just the science stuff that gets beamed into my computer every day from the things that I sign up for. It's incredible. You can feel the bubbling of this. Let's get all the secrets. Here's this secret. Okay, we got this one. Let's go to the next one. Okay, we got this secret. Let's go to the next one. Okay, we got this one. Now that they marked the genome, they're finding all these various markers now. I mean, every day you read that they're finding another marker for another thing, and they're beginning to see the whole pattern. Incredible energy. All the secrets coming out. Nobody's denied this knowledge. Nobody. I mean, Gutenberg is not that long ago. It really isn't. You can see this incredible force in which it's not about unique individuals getting access to special knowledge. It's about everybody being able to access more knowledge than they can ever digest. I mean, you can't. There's no way. You can't. It's as close as you can get to understanding what the whole is. 10 years ago, there were 34 websites, and now there's 34 million. There's 34 million. And it's growing every day. This is incredible information. You can't grasp all that stuff. But the whole can, because the whole is that. In the line 13:1, harmony through affection, a role of openness in listening to others with affection. The other side of this is the politician kissing babies. If you're going to cut somebody's head off as a ruler, you're not going to be a good baby kisser. I mean, this is the triumph of the collective. Now, I have my things with the collective. Being a freak, I'm not a great fan of collective procedures. Because if you're a freak, you can end up being left out in the cold when the collective decides that freaks aren't healthy. However, this has been a triumph for the collective. And it remains so. In other words, that we live in an age in which the collective has become the new tribe. We have new kinds of tribes that exist now that are global, that come from different backgrounds and different cultures, different language bases, have new ways in which we are integrating together. Every time you have somebody who's got the 13th gate who bumps into somebody who's carrying the 37th gate, there is a mutative spark that's released. It's just there. It's going on. It's like the magic of what happens to us when we become horizontal and we reduce the gates that we're sensitive to, and we end up in a different matrix, and we end up in the dream rave, only to discover that none of that has anything to do with what's of value to us personally. It's just the program taking advantage of the fact that our personalities are out of commission, so we don't act in any stupid way and get in the way of the information. Not only that, but the moment that you lie down and go to sleep, chances are you're going to become a reflector or a projector, and we get rid of all that nasty energy nonsense. The program has little respect for us in that sense, because we don't have what it takes. We don't. Just being able to say that the 13 and the 37 coming together in something, yeah. It's a nice concept. I want you to appreciate that. It's a really nice concept. And what you'll see is that the people who are going to bond together in this cycle, different people will bond together in the next cycle because, again, these matchups are very important. And so, we have certain relationships in this cycle that are just built on those combinations. Watch what happens to those beings that have that kind of relationship now, and the cycle changes. They won't have that, The 37 will be saying to the 13, I have no use for you now. I don't. I have no use for you now. Go away. Maybe you have something else I need. Let's have lunch. We left off at the opening up, if you will, of the personality of our time, of the personality of the cycle that we're in. We looked at the 37th gate. And we saw very clearly that the nature of the 37th gate as it exists now, that there's something very important for it always to consider, is that the only way that it's going to be involved in processes that are mutative and of value, not only to the totality but also to themselves, is that what they're seeking ultimately is that they're seeking transparency, they're seeking the secret through the bond. And one of the most important things about 37s and the way in which they make their bonds now is for them to recognize that those bonds aren't simply to create organizational arrangements, but there also has to be a reward in that. And the reward in that is shared information. And shared information is one of the bases of what we look at. When we look at the 3740, we always talk about loyalty. In other words, one of the most difficult things for 37s and 40s to deal with is the lack of loyalty. And one of the easiest ways in which loyalty becomes a problem is when there's no transparency. Then it's hard to see whether or not someone is being loyal or not, and so forth and so on. So as we go through these themes that are there, recognize that they have an application in terms of your design. In other words, recognize that they are creating, let's say, a programming impetus or a programming direction, that if you're a 37, you are looking for those secrets, and if you're a 13, you're looking for 37s to share them with. In other words, it's something that's there, that's a basic in the way in which the program is operating. The next stage is to go to the opposition. And when we go to the opposition of the 37, what we get is the 40. Now, there's many themes here. Remember that we're dealing with something that is just more than just being able to translate it to what is our respective illusion about what a 40th gate in a human being is. Sexually, the 40th gate masturbates doesn't mean that the totality does. One has to keep those perspectives in mind. Well, maybe it does. I just don't have any way of finding out. At least the fantasies would be interesting, I assume. But then again, I don't know where you're at that level, so I have no idea. However, it's amusing. Human beings have a problem with the heart center. Heart center makes life very difficult for most human beings. The ego is not a cup of tea. The ego creates as many dilemmas as it solves. And the undefined ego, which is the majority of humanity, is really messed up because they don't have a defined ego and are caught up in all kinds of ego games. And the 40th gate is a very, very powerful ego because it's the ego that's rooted in the stomach. Nothing more dangerous than willpower that is initiated out of hunger. This is a very powerful force. The 40th gate is a very powerful force. It is a gate, one of the three gates of denial. In other words, it is a gate that stands there and says, well, I don't know. The 37th gate is always saying, I know there's a God. And one day I'm going to meet it, or whatever it is. And the 40th gate is always saying, you're not going to meet anything. You're just going to live your life and drop dead. There's nothing to wait for. So there is this basic tension. It's one of the most interesting aspects of the 40-37 bargain, is that the 37 and the 40 have to come to grips with that. And of course, when we're living in this age, we can finally get to a point where we can actually have a bargain that's based on real knowledge. I mean, we've never had that when it came to our spirituality. Our spirituality has always been rooted in belief systems. This is the Piscean way. And the Piscean way, the Piscean era, has dominated what we call religious thought. Just about all of the religious practices that we look at came to their maturity within the Piscean age. And they're still practiced today with great difficulty. I mean, it's no problem for me as a heretic to upset every fundamentalist group that exists at any spectrum in any religion. Because human design has nothing to do with religion. Anybody who's ever taken one of my mystical courses knows that every religion and every aspect of every religion, as those of you will see when I do the second half of this program, that all of us carry all of that within us. It's all part of the genetics, all of those things. But the truth itself is deeply threatening to the whole religious structure. In the same way that human design is dangerous in that sense to a lot of antiquated pseudosciences that are still following original patterns and that are not part of what is a viable, authentic synthesis. When we're dealing with the 40-37, the theme of our time is that we need to reveal all these things. We need to find out all these things. And one of the underlying things that we must find out, is that we have to answer our basic spiritual question. Are we created? Can we know what created us? These are very basic things. It's one of the oldest underlying themes. Tomorrow, because tomorrow I will deal with solar plex mutation and the transformation that's going to take place on the planet. But one of the things to understand about solar plex mutation is that in solar plex mutation, the histidine codon that resides in the 49 breaks with the 19. And that ultimately, when we're dealing with raves, they will not have a functional channel between the 19 and the 49. Now, the 19 is the pressure and the root of our spirituality. It is the pressure and our root for our need for God, religion, all of these things as a glue that binds us together in our tribes. Now, raves, that is solar plex mutated children, will never have this question. They will not need it. We need it. We need it. And one of the most important things to understand about the whole stream that moves from the 19 to the 40 is that it's about touch. It's about touch, and it's about touch in the most practical sense. If God is not going to stand in this room and hold your hand, it doesn't exist. It's about what exists. It's about what you can realistically know and understand. It isn't about anything that is beyond you. We all have built into us a potential to grasp the truth, because the truth, fortunately for us, is simple. It's simple. This is an era in which we must come to understand. The door will close in 2027. Is that we have to come to a point where we have a community belief. Now, it doesn't have to be universally accepted. It has to be globally practiced. In other words, we're reaching a point where, as a heretic, I don't mind seeing the death of religious dogma. I don't. In any other incarnation, I would be tearing the temples down. I don't now because I think they're pretty. But I don't think they're useful. The magic is when you look at the other side of this key. Because the other side of this key is rooted in the seventh gate. And it's rooted in the seventh gate in the first line, and the first line is the authoritarian. It's the authoritarian. The first line says, iron hand, both enlightened and despotic. Venus exalted as the basic values and rules imposed on a child, the capacity of the self to guide with authority, and also the capacity of the self to insist that its authority is the best. And that's how you get to relax. Do you see what this 40th gate first line is about? Enjoy the fruits of your labors. Witness the lilies of the field, they do not toil. It's all about coming to grips with the fact that the only spirituality is in here. It's in here. It ain't out there. Not for us. Not for us. If you're going to find God, you're not going to find God out there. You're going to find it in here. Because it is us. It is us. We are creation. We are it, after all. We are the breath and the form of life itself. And the moment that you find self-love, you find the perfection. You find the perfection. You find your holiness. You find your mythology. You find all of it. And that's the direction of the bargain. That if you get the secrets, in return for the secrets, what do you want? You want to relax and enjoy it. And you want to relax and enjoy it because you are your own authority. There's nothing more important to grasp than that. It's what I've been teaching for 15 years. Be your own authority. Nobody, not God, not some fucking angel, nobody, but you are the authority. Nobody. And only then do you get to this special place where you see the magic of your dance. It's your dance. There's nothing like it. This is differentiation, and this is the place we're supposed to get to. This place where out of all that vast differentiation, you got a lot of passengers in different vehicles, and you can just let the band play on. And you don't have to worry about your part. And you don't have to worry about where it's going. There's a great joke for you all. Please understand, there is no destination. There's only the journey. We're going to die out soon. It's not that we're getting anywhere. It's the journey. It's all about the journey. You think dinosaurs were finished when that comet came along and whacked them? You go as far as the journey goes. But it doesn't mean it's getting anywhere. Not for us. We got these little lives. Whoosh, gone. There's this wonderful analogy in relationship to a human life and the life of the earth. That a human life of 84 years, Iranian cycle, human life of 84 years is worth 1/2 breath of the earth. You're dead. You're dead. You're gone. Half breath of the earth. And here we are. Oh, I got so many things I have to do. Yeah. It's gone, man. See, all this business about saving this and saving that, and saving the world. Save yourself now. That's the movie. We're all alone here. We're stuck with these illusions. You can't escape this. You can die, but it isn't going to do you any good. They'll throw you back into another one. Go through it again. We've been going through it again and again and again and again and again and again. And you can see that we don't get that smart each time. It's not like, there's this vast improvement, I mean, as numbers, there's more ignorance on the planet today than existed on the whole planet for its eternity. There's also numbers that are different on the other side. I won't be too negative. But think about the joke of all this. Here's the key of our time. It's the key. The key says, all right, we need to find out the secret in order to be able to enjoy being our own authority. And it's the whole movement. And you have to see that when the door closes in 2027, this is what's closing. This opportunity to really become your own authority. Now, by the way, that's a real revolution. I have the privilege, because of who I am and what I do, that I get to meet people who are practicing and working on their process. And you get to see what authority means for human beings who have never had any authority of their own. Always had somebody else's authority. To see how transforming that process is. And at the same time to see how difficult it is. The sacral being who's asked to do something, who hears themselves go yes to something that their mind thinks is horrendous. And that the mind is saying, well, what about this authority over here, and that authority over here, and this authority over there, and that authority over there, and what will they think, and what will blah, 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 blah. How much courage it takes to be your own authority. When we've been conditioned for generation after generation after generation after generation to take the authority of others and to assume that they're correct. They're not. Some of the time, part of the time. The not self only speaks out of its not self nature. Now, as far as I know, I'm the only teacher that has taught as myself. So what the hell were they teaching? I mean, what precisely were they teaching? To be yourself and to wake up to your own authority, this is something that goes against everything that's out there in the culture. Everything. No society wants to have a population in which the population individually, each and every one of them, are their own authority. Nobody wants that. It's frightening. We've been conditioned so far away from what is our truth. And the greatest joy in this life is when you are your own authority. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's what we're made for. And it's only then that you can enjoy the fruits. You can't enjoy it any other way. You can't. Nobody can give you any of these things. Nobody's authority is ever going to wake you up. Nobody's. Nobody telling you what to do is going to make your life better. People were always asking me what to do. I would tell them to go home. It's not my business what you do. It's up to you what you do. It's your life. And everybody has a way. I mean, we all have a way. We all have a mechanical way to play this game. All of us. If it weren't for fear, I mean, there's so much fear. It would be so easy for human beings to say, okay, it's up to me. I'm the boss. I'm going to know what's right and wrong. And nobody in this life is going to tell me what's right or wrong. And nobody is going to change my right into a wrong or my wrong into a right. And nobody's going to pressure me to be what I'm not when I don't want to be. All of those things. I realize more and more, it's why in many ways this is a time for me to back away from the level of teaching that I've done, is that for me as an ego manifester, single definition ego manifester, it's very difficult for me to identify with the difficulty that many people have with being their own authority. You know, for me, being my own authority was natural when I was not self. It was just fucked up and messy and unaware, unawake. I'm integration. I'm designed that way as an ego being. Yet I see that in the work that I've done over the years, how difficult it is for human beings to really accept that they can be their authority, that they don't need anybody else's authority. And this is the program, and it's ending. I mean, it's ending. You know, if you don't get it by 2027, you're not going to get it. In that sense, you know, it's ending. You see, by 2027, adults are not supposed to be ignorant of human design. Let me put it that way. I mean, the way that the human design program operates is that by 2027, human design is for children. You know, babies coming into the world. Parents nurturing them according to their nature. You know, after 2027, if you're an adult, you're not going to care. It's not in the program. See, you think you're in charge. I mean, that's the whole thing. You know, human beings say, well, what do you mean I'm not going to care? Of course I'm going to care. I care now. No. You only care now because it's in the program to care now. You know, all of you that are 37s, you know, you're only seeking the secrets because that's the damn program. Otherwise, it would just be reduced to what it is at its basic level, which is just about finding a good partnership that somebody at least takes out the garbage on time. It's in the program. We have this enormous vanity that we think that we're in charge of things. That it's up to us, just as you think somewhere inside of you that it's up to you that you follow your strategy. Which is one of the greatest jokes of all. I mean, I'm Mr. No Choice, eh? Just because you know your strategy doesn't mean you're going to follow it. What kind of arrogance is that? You really think that's true? You really think because you know something you can do it? What a joke. There is no choice. It's just geometries. There are opportunities in the geometry. Some people get it, some people don't. That's the hierarchy. That's the way it is. No choice. And it's the program. It's the little program of the transits that are rolling around. You watch the next 3 years with Pluto in 26. Everybody up on their damn soapbox. Imagine a whole planet of 6 billion egoists. Can you smell that? 6 billion egoists on the planet for 3 years, all of them claiming the truth. And most of them will think that that's really them claiming the truth, rather than being instruments of Pluto and conditioning by the program. This is the program. And if you were to take this configuration and you get to the gate and you get to the 27, you know, and you get to the change in all of that, boom, it's gone. It's like it was never there. You know, when I started this morning and I showed you the graph of all of the epochs, you know, give me a really good set of historians who understand human design and let them go back cycle by cycle, epoch by epoch, and you'll see how things just turn on and turn off. They're sequences in a program. So this is the time to get the fruits. That's my cliche about the snake at the end of the game. Here, it's all here. Here are the fruits. Here's everything. Have a good time. Have a good life. Blah, blah, blah. It's just a vehicle. It's all a joke. It's all a joke. We don't write the script. We don't direct. Just players. Just passengers. And it's all just there, moving, happening. It is an organism that is bigger than us. It is greater than all of us together. And this life force that makes up this planet is much more than just the 6 billion humans. The crystals of consciousness are in every cell on this planet. Every cell on this planet. Every blade of grass. Everything that swims and flies and moves and crawls. You name it. This is an enormous consciousness field. We're components. Our job is to demonstrate that consciousness can operate in all forms. Because in the end, that's what it's about. In the end, mystically, we are the design crystal of the whole. It is our body. And it's our body to discover. One of the most exciting days for me is when they put the Hubble telescope up in space. That's like the baby in the womb opening up its eyes. It's like, wow. What a thing to see. And it was a woman. I love this story. When they put Hubble up, it had a problem. And basically what happened was that it was nearsighted. It has a huge lens, and there was an error in the way in which the lens had been made. And so in order to save this incredible experiment, it's a wonderful thing, they made a new lens, basically, like a contact lens for a human. And they made a new lens to put over the old one in order to correct its vision. And it was a woman who put that in place because they couldn't use a man. They needed somebody who was very small. And of course, in space, you can move enormously. She was moving 10 tons. And I think she weighed like, 120 pounds or something. I mean, just nothing, this little woman moving this huge lens to open up the eye of our consciousness to be able to see the body. I mean, from the inside. I lived for a while in New Mexico, and it's Hopi Indian country. And the Hopi Indians are interesting people. But one of the things about them that fascinated me is that they claim to know where the umbilical cord is in space. It's in space. That there's an umbilical cord out there. Great piece of mysticism, that. Okay. So you have to understand something. It's a program since 1615. Everything that we have seen, what we look at as the speed up of our society and the way all of this has been functioning and all of these vast changes and all of this exploration and all of this science and all of this discovery and all of this stuff, this is the program. If you take that away and you give us another configuration, you can bomb us back to the Stone Age. Because we're just killer monkeys. And we just have this patina. And this patina is managed by the program. I mean, it's just managed by the program. I was just in my room, and I'm a CNN junkie, and I flip on CNN, and there's this little banner going across the bottom of the page. Man just arrested for murder, for killing and eating the flesh of his victim. And this is just running across the bottom of the page. I mean, it's just a veneer, all this. I mean, that's why we live in this time of this organizational pressure, to keep us from being as savage as we can possibly be. If you take a look at the 20th century, you'll see clearly what we are capable of and how horrendous we can be. This vast movement towards opening everything up and getting everybody to be controlled through organizational acceptance. You know, the harmony that's structured out of all of this. It's all part of these themes that we've been conditioned by. They're going to go away. The things that created nation states, the things that created institutions of all kinds, the things that have created all of these multinational, global, planetary, blah, 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 they're all going to disappear. All of them. You know, one day they'll watch that and they'll say, yes, that's true. That's exactly what happened. You know, and there'll be all these people who will go around pondering, well, why did this happen? Why did we suddenly move from darkness to the Renaissance? Why did we suddenly move from this to that? These are just steps along the road. It's just a program. Nothing more, nothing less. It's just a program. I was talking at lunch about one of my favorite hats, which is helpless and incompetent. One of the nice things about doing gray courses or doing courses on color or, you know, doing the kind of courses that penetrate through the individual identification is that you really do get to a point where you see, you know, we are helpless. We are helpless. There's no sense in, you know, trying to manage and control the river. You know, the whole thing is to just be there. Be there. Okay, so what we've looked at first here is we've looked at the 37 going across to the 40. And you can see here that the 37 is keynoted the way, and the 40 is keynoted the temple. These are mystical terms. The way, and we've seen the way through the 37, the way is to seek harmony through organizing. It's harmony through organizing. And it's harmony through transparency. In other words, to be able to organize so that everybody can share in information. So that's the way. The way is to share, the way is transparency, the way is bonding together and to be organized together for the benefit of the community, after all. So sanitation, you know, benefited the community, so forth and so on. You know, the educational process, educational institution changed family life, kept children out of the workforce longer, gave them more time to develop, all of these things that have come along in this process. We were able, by creating institutionalization of schools, to actually be able to create a whole generation of intellectually enriched young people. In other words, we began the mental expansion by being able to organize education at that level. The other side, the temple. And what we've seen, what the temple isn't, I'm going to get down on, you know, it's like the Christian symbol of somebody nailed on a cross. I mean, that is not inviting. You know, this whole business about being down on your knees and suffering, you know, let's whip ourselves, you know, all of this stuff. You know, the reality is that if you look at what the temple really is, and that's the temple now, is to enjoy the fruits of our labors because we have been able to find our authority. We have been able to find our authority. Now remember, that's going to be corrupted. It's just a program theme. So you're going to have people who are going to claim, as they do now, an intense authority from the outside. So, you know, the fundamentalist Islamicists or the fundamentalist Hindus or the fundamentalist Jews or the fundamentalist Christians or the fundamentalist Buddhists, God knows there's fundamentalists everything. All of them are also caught up in that temple saying the authority is God's and only God's. You know, and the transparency is getting to them because otherwise we wouldn't have a rise of fundamentalism. It's one of the things to understand about where we are now is that the last thing standing in the way of the totality, our totality, the humanness totality, is religious differentiation. I mean, you know, my God is better than your God is a game that's heavily played on this planet still. Because you can see that it's still part of the theme of the time. And so there is this tension between my authority So we have had literally millions of people leaving organized religions to try to find other things. Millions of people leaving their faith to enter into another faith. Millions of people giving up faith to check out faithlessness, and on and on and on and on and on. We have all the variations that are built in there. But remember, the core of that is finding the secret. The core of that is that you have to get to the truth. There is no other way. And only then are you really going to find the true temple. Because the true temple is here. This is the temple. This is the Holy Grail. This is the vessel. This is the magical instrument. This is what it's all about. How blasé we are about these machines. There are millions of functions taking place every moment within these vehicles that we not only do not know, that is speaking of us, that we don't know anything about. There are so many millions of things going on in this vehicle that keeps this illusion of life going. This is such a complex, such an extraordinary thing. It's an incredible package. And that the only way that you can really honor this temple is let the package have its life. That really is the point, eh? This package is designed to move in a certain way on a certain line. Doesn't do me any good to sit back as the passenger and start screaming, no, go left, go right. Stop here, I want to check this out. Don't go any further. Let's have a rest. I want to change the color of the car. Doesn't work. Just doesn't work. And you end up with what I've seen for 15 years, which is the sadness of the life of the not-self. How deeply sad it is. So there's a point here where you can see a basic dynamic that's been at work since the beginning of the 17th century, since that 1615. And this is the challenge of science to faith. It's only since this cycle has been at work that faith has been under enormous pressure. The discovering fossils, what that did to the Old Testament calendar. How could the world have started in 4000 BC when we got things that were obviously here long before that? What's going on? There's something wrong here. There's still people in America, by the way, who think that I love this, that the dinosaur fossils were placed on Earth to test man's faith. Isn't that wonderful? Talk about rationalizing, eh? You'll rationalize anything. Human beings are incredible. No. These were placed here by God to trick us. Right. Okay. Just to look at the cartoons that were drawn at the time of Darwin's first writings being published, all the monkey jokes and on and on and on. It's something very important to understand. This is a time in which the principles of faith either have to be established logically and scientifically, or they will no longer be able to exist. They just won't. The fundamentalism that you see in the world, the religious reaction to the scientific world, this is all part of what this program is all about, and it's coming to a head. Now, we see that today because it's crystallized for us in the typical way in which duality works, because we are duality. We have two forces in the world. We have forces that want to go back to the 12th century. We have forces that want to move forward. We have two different kinds of views. We have forces that want to give authority to science and forces that want to give authority to God. And now we're at a point where there is a deep clash between these forces. And it's going to get messier. Remember that. It always does. The moment that a binary crystallizes, you're really at the end of something. We're at the end of a real struggle. I know clearly that the concepts of Godhead are simply aspects of the program. It is also clear to me that the totality was created. By what? I don't know. I honestly don't care, because I don't think it's personal. I mean, the idea of a personal God, you get down beside your bed and you pray for Auntie or Uncle God to help you because you don't want to fail your exam tomorrow. It's obvious to me that the program operates through very specific personality instruments, and those instruments bear many names. It's very easy to see how the Godhead of one culture and the Godhead of another culture all basically represent the same aspects. They just do. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at a Prometheus or Mercury or Loki or whatever the case may be. You end up with an archetype of a specific kind of energy, personality energy, that we defined historically as part of the Godhead. The idea of a universal principle of God, for me, that's always a joke. It's always a joke because it's a binary. I mean, this is a binary. I can't imagine that it came out of a singularity. Doesn't make any sense. And the totality is a binary. This totality, us, and everything about the totality is a binary in nature. The mystics of the 19th century had a term, they called it the ring past naught. You see, I can't ask a gene on a strand of DNA in one of my cells to understand my life or who I am. It's obvious, isn't it? That's not going to happen. What makes you think that us, who are simply relative aspects, like a gene, relative aspects in a larger whole, to understand the environment that created that totality? We have no access to that. My question isn't about whether there's a God or not. It's not the point. It's obvious that we are creation at work. It is obvious. It's obvious scientifically. There was a Big Bang. It's obvious. There was a start, and it was a binary. So it's clear that it was created. The other thing is we've got a problem in human design. And the problem not for human design. And the problem is the whole business of the soul. I had this wonderful experience in Ibiza. About a month ago, I picked up a local writer's history of the island. Great book. And discovered, much to my surprise, that the ancient Phoenicians who settled the island, that they believed in two souls, one for the body and one for the spirit. And they actually had separate ceremonies at death for the two different souls. Where I had my experience with the voice, right behind my ruina was a Phoenician ritual gathering place with an old step-down well. It's nice to see that old knowledge, such perfect knowledge, find its way back, into the world. Can we make a short break? Yeah, the muse walked away.